Hey everyone, it's Cami with Heart and Vine Apothecary. And today I wanted to talk to you about how sex workers have played into the role of preserving magic, particularly from the Middle Ages. So, the idea of literary magic, things that are found in books, that was really kept in the hands of a few, uh, well-educated elite men. The grimoire tradition, ceremonial magic, that was largely the purview of uh, men in the church, physicians, lawyers, people who had the money and the time uh, to experiment and figure this stuff out. But with the advent of the Guttenberg press in the 1440s, that opened up a whole can of worms because now books could be mass produced and they could get into the hands of people who couldn't get them before. So come the mid 1500s to about the 1600s, the Protestant Reformation, the Anglicans, the Catholics, the Inquisition, they were all trying to basically find anybody using magic books and burn the books and possibly execute the people. Not everyone that was accused of witchcraft or sortilege or consorting with spirits or anything like that, not everyone was executed. Some people got off with a warning and then all of their books were burned. And actually, the idea of the burning times, like the early modern period burning times, is a myth. Most people were hung, drowned, squished, run through, tortured to death, kept awake so long that they died. There were a lot of horrible ways that people died during the early modern period and during the particularly during the period of the witch panic, which was really only in the later 1600s. It was not that long of a time. So what was being burned mostly were books, not people. And so a lot of the magical tradition was kind of lost because a lot of those books were burned. And people were taking personal notes and creating new parts of grimoires, and all of that was lost with whatever book was burned. So in this period, in the mid 1500s into the 1600s, the churches are having trouble keeping up with the number of magical books that are being circulated. They just can't keep up with it. And so they are stockpiling these magical books and they're running out of room. And so they're calling for these mass book burnings and they're just trying to get rid of it. But they're having trouble keeping up with it because it's in such circulation. At this time, the literacy rates for men were much higher than the literacy rates for women. However, there were women who could read. Not as many as men, but there were women who could read. And interestingly, the women that could read that were turning to magic were often sex workers because they were looking for protection. They were looking for protection. They were looking for ways to get more work. They were looking for ways to help their clients. And so we have three different ways that they were preserving charms. One was orally. So for the women, the prostitutes, the sex workers, whatever, that couldn't read, they were keeping these charms orally, and they would speak them, and then maybe draw the sigils and different images on the ground or on a piece of parchment that they found. It wasn't as organized, and those people actually considered their charms to be less efficacious than the people that could write the charms down and then carry the charms with them. Another thing that people would do is write the charm down, burn the paper, and then drink the ashes so that you were actually imbibing. the charm. But even more powerful than those were the people who actually had a book of magic and were working the charms. Because in the occult and in the grimoire tradition and the idea of these magic books, the book itself has power. And so if you're getting your charm from a book, it's more powerful, is what the thought was. And actually in the older grimoire tradition, when these books were being handwritten, the people writing them were mixing like magical inks with blood and resins and different herbs, and they were making potent inks to write their charms and sigils with. And so those words, the actual ink, combined with the power of the image in the word, were actually considered incredibly powerful if it came from one of those books. And so that was handed down through the centuries. And so now if you had a copy of one of these printed books, that was more powerful than one that you simply wrote by hand on a piece of paper. And it was more powerful than one that you used orally and maybe drew images on the ground with. So what were the charms that they were using? They were largely using protection charms, obviously. They were using charms to draw in clients, so love magic. And that, for the church, was a major problem, because that meant that these sex workers, these women, were conniving and coercing men off of the path of righteousness and into their beds. And it was around this time as well that higher clergy and various writers on the topic of witches and witchcraft were starting to think that maybe it was women who were in league with the devil because they were too weak-minded to stand up to the true evil of the Prince of Lies. It was just easier to get these women to do his work, which wasn't fucking true. It was mostly rich men who were working all of the ceremonial magics. And the folk magic mixed with ceremonial magic that was in use by the peasantry was really for protection, like largely for protection and finding love. There are so many charms. Like, look at all the nursery rhymes from England that are about finding your true love or waking up from a dream and knowing what your husband's gonna look like. There are so many of them. And also, when we look at the different folk charms that were available and being circulated, they are largely magic for protection, not only from witchcraft and demons and the devil and stuff, but also protection of your assets, protection for your family from people who would do them harm, and that included the tax collectors. Magic was being circulated for various reasons, but it's very interesting to me, and I think it's really cool, that one of the ways that our magic has been preserved was actually in the hands of sex workers looking for protection and a way to draw in clients. And then some of them were actually doing charms for their clients. They would write or say charms for luck. Like, say John was someone that gambled. They would give them a charm to make them luckier in their gambling. Or they would give them a charm to protect their livestock. I just think that's so cool. And so, sex workers need to be appreciated and lauded in like every possible way. But now you know that they also deserve some of the credit for magic being preserved in the way that we know it today. And I think that's so cool. So anyway, this has been Cami. Hug a sex worker. Thank them for preserving the magics. And have an awesome day.